I'm 33 and have been with my husband, who's 38, for 9 years, married for 6. We've got 2 little boys, ages 4 and 3. A bit of background on us: I stopped working when I got pregnant with our first son and never went back, mainly because we didn't need the extra income. My husband brings in around $400,000 a year working from home, and his schedule is super flexible. Since I'm home and not working, I naturally take on more of the childcare, but honestly, not by a huge margin. He's really hands-on with the kids. He's a bit intense about cleanliness and organization, so he's kind of a neat freak, but in a helpful way. Cooking is one of his biggest passions, right up there with sex, so he plans and makes more than half of our meals. Like any couple, we've had our share of ups and downs, but overall we're both patient, caring people, and have built a relationship that reflected that, at least until recently. We've always seen eye to eye when it comes to parenting, and my entire family adores him. His own family isn't really in the picture. He grew up in a rough, unstable environment with very little money. Before we had kids, our sex life was wild. We were intimate over 10 times a week, easily. Sure, we had moments where one of us was stressed or not feeling great, but overall, sex was frequent, sometimes even more than once a day for years. When we decided to have children, we both understood it would completely change our lives and our relationship. We even talked about how sex might slow down for a bit, but neither of us thought it would be a big issue. During my pregnancy, we still kept up a pretty regular sex life. That shifted hard once our first son was born. My sex drive dropped off a cliff. I just didn't feel any desire, and thankfully, my husband was very understanding about it. He said my body just spent 9 months growing a whole human, so it made sense that my priorities had shifted. He seemed okay with the new pace of things for the next couple of years, and I thought everything was fine. But once our youngest hit about 18 months, he started showing more interest again in mornings, nights, more physical affection. I turned him down fairly often because I still wasn't feeling that spark. After a few months of that, he gently asked what he could do to help me regain my libido. I didn't take it well. I was already emotional, and it led to what I'd call our first real argument in all our years together. We both apologized, but just a few weeks later, he brought it up again. For context, it's not like we had stopped having sex altogether, we were still doing it 2 or 3 times a week. But he suggested we try couples therapy, and also that I might want to see an endocrinologist. This time, I handled the conversation better and agreed to both. The hormone tests came back normal, and we went through a few therapists, but none really helped. They all basically said his expectations were a bit unrealistic, and that marriage is about compromise. His response? He wasn't ready to compromise on something that felt so central to him. When one therapist asked if sex was more important to him than a healthy marriage, he said no, but looking back, I could tell there was hesitation in his answer. Over the next few months, I noticed a shift in how emotionally present he was. He still showed care and affection, but something was missing. The depth we'd always shared just wasn't there anymore. He also stopped initiating sex as often. At first, I thought maybe he'd made peace with less frequency, but when I asked about it, he said that constantly being turned down was taking a toll on him emotionally. So now, he was trying to find a balance between wanting intimacy and avoiding the hurt that comes with rejection. I felt awful hearing that. I explained that my rejections weren't about him. I still loved him deeply and was attracted to him. He said he understood, but the way he brushed it off told me he didn't fully believe it. I've tried encouraging him to see a therapist on his own, but he says everyone processes things differently and therapy just isn't his way. Things stayed like that for the rest of the year, and I honestly thought maybe this was just our new normal. Then last night happened. He came into our bedroom after reading the boys their bedtime stories. We take turns doing that, and said he needed to have a serious talk. I instantly knew it was going to be about sex. The only times in our entire 9 years together that he's used that kind of serious tone have always been about that. But I wasn't even close to prepared for what he said next. For the first time since I've known him, he cried. Not tears of frustration or stress, real, heavy, heartbreaking sadness. He told me he didn't think he was built to be in a relationship where physical intimacy wasn't a regular part of expressing love. He said he would always love me and that I'd forever be the mother of his children, but he couldn't keep going like this. He laid out 2 options: either we divorce and co-parent, or we open the marriage so he could find that level of sexual connection with someone else, while staying with me. I honestly don't remember the first part of the conversation clearly, it's all a blur. I went from devastated to furious in seconds. I said some awful things I wish I could take back. He stayed calm for the most part but told me he wouldn't keep talking if I was yelling. Eventually, I calmed down and begged him to give us a chance to rebuild our sex life. I was so desperate I even tried to initiate sex right then, which feels so humiliating now. He gently turned me down. He said he was willing to work on getting us to a better place, but that it couldn't mean I force myself to have sex just to make him happy. He said he still had needs and, for now, would need to meet them outside the marriage. I told him I didn't want an open marriage and pleaded again for us to fix things. He said he needed space and was going to stay with a friend for the night. I texted him early this morning and told him not to come back just yet. I decided to take the kids to my parents' place for a couple of days. He was reluctant at first but eventually agreed. Now I'm sitting here, trying to make sense of all of this. I don't want to lose my marriage, but the idea of him sleeping with someone else tears me apart. I feel like I'm breaking, and I have no idea what to do. I don't even know what I'm looking for. Advice? Comfort? A miracle? My parents can tell something's up because I'm clearly not okay. Worst of all, even our little boys are picking up on the tension. I've tried to keep it together, but I'm falling apart. My husband told me that if we stay together and he keeps feeling unwanted, he'll end up resenting me. And he said it's better for the kids to grow up with happy, separated parents than ones who quietly hate each other. I'm stuck between opening the marriage or moving toward divorce. I don't know which hurts more. Update 1: I haven't had the time to respond to everyone yet, but I will tomorrow. Thank you for all the support and thoughtful advice. I've spent most of today talking with my mom while my dad took the kids on a little adventure. My mom's been incredible, solid as a rock. I'm starting to believe this might really end in divorce, but I'm hoping we can go through it with respect and without bitterness. Some of the comments have been tough to read but come from a place of care, and I appreciate that. But really, I've had time to sit with everything, and I don't want to just jump to demonizing my husband. Do I think his stance on sex is extreme? Yeah, absolutely. It feels immature and selfish now that I've had time to process it. And I know I don't have to forgive him for giving me such a hurtful ultimatum. But at the same time, this is a man who's shown me deep love and unwavering support through some of the hardest times of my life. He holds himself to ridiculously high standards, almost obsessively so. And while some might say I'm being naive, I know this man inside and out. I honestly can't imagine him going through with something like cheating. He's too proud and too emotionally fragile to carry the weight of that kind of guilt. Right now, he's staying at the home of one of his college buddies, a married couple we've known forever. He's the godfather to their 3 kids, and their family is practically an extension of ours. The wife actually reached out to me to say she's here if I need someone to talk to. She knows things aren't good between us right now. I know some people think he'll go out, struggle to find anyone, and come crawling back. But here's the thing, he was part of BDSM and sex-positive communities back in his 20s, before I ever met him. That world isn't new to him. He's always kept himself in great shape and still works out 6 days a week. So no, I don't think he's going to have trouble finding people willing to meet his needs. And I can't pretend I believe he'll hit a wall and suddenly realize how hard it is out there and come running home. That's just not who he is. He seems to believe that if he holds up his end of the bargain, being a provider, a father, a husband, then life should give him what he wants in return. It's like he thinks he deserves to have everything, including a loving marriage and a sexually fulfilling side arrangement, at the same time. To the people telling me to take him for every cent he's worth, look, I've already scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney this week. I'll do what I need to do to protect myself and my kids. But this isn't going to be some scorched earth battle. He's always been generous with money, whether it's with charities, friends, or me, and he's a devoted father. I say that with complete sincerity. He loves those boys as deeply as I do. I'm not going to set out to destroy him, even if some of you think I should. We're still going to be co-parents, regardless of whether we stay married or not, and I want to handle this in a way that reflects some level of respect and maturity. If we can't agree amicably, I won't hesitate to go to court, but I honestly believe he'd sign off on any arrangement that's remotely fair. He's making a terrible choice as a partner, but he's not a terrible human being. I've watched him wrestle with this decision, and while I think he's too selfish to choose the obvious, decent path, I don't believe he's doing it without remorse. It's like he has this fantasy that he can bend reality to fit a version of life where he gets what he wants, but also gets to keep being the good guy. Thanks again for all the messages and thoughtful advice. I'll try to respond to more when I can. Update 2. I'm honestly overwhelmed by how many comments and DMs have poured in. Some of the advice has been incredibly helpful and genuinely supportive. Others, while probably well-meaning, feel more like projections, people processing their own past hurt rather than actually engaging with what I've shared. That's fine, though. I know it comes from experience, and I appreciate the effort. To the handful of creeps and trolls that always crawl out when a woman shares something vulnerable, screw you. Anyway, my husband reached out and asked to meet up and talk this evening. I've agreed. If it's allowed, I'll post one final update afterward. A few people had questions that I'll try to answer quickly. 1. Yes, he is obsessive. He has a lot of unresolved trauma from childhood, and while that explains a lot about how he processes intimacy and conflict, it doesn't excuse what I now recognize was an absolutely unacceptable move, giving me a sexual ultimatum instead of working through it with me like a partner. 2. Is the sex good when we do have it? That would be a massive understatement. Honestly, one of the reasons I fell in love with him was his energy and passion for life, and that includes intimacy. His view of sex has always been different. He's not orgasm focused, and there are times he doesn't even finish. It's more about connection for him, or intensity. I used to say he approaches sex like he does cooking, meticulously, creatively, passionately. The best sex I've ever had, by far, has been with him. 3. This whole experience has made me realize we're probably going to get divorced. And it's also made me realize, without a doubt, that he needs therapy. He's so high functioning that it never really occurred to me before, but you all made some very compelling points. I'm going to try to convince him to go, whether we stay married or not. I'll always love him. He's the father of my boys, and I want him to grow into someone more emotionally whole. I know people think I'm naive about the cheating stuff. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm clinging to an idealized version of him. But I've said all I can say. If you think I'm in denial, that's your right. Maybe I am. I'm not here to argue. People project. That's what humans do, especially online. 5. Yes, my sex drive did match his, at least for a long time. But I don't think I was ever wired that way naturally. Before I met him, my libido wasn't particularly high. His friends used to jokingly call him a machine because of how active he was before we got serious. I knew all of this going in. I was his first real relationship at 29, and his friends always seemed to treat me a little differently because of that. Looking back, I wish we'd had a deeper conversation early on about what it would mean when things inevitably changed. I still remember one of our first dates, him sitting across the table, casually saying, "I want to eat good food and have great sex. That's what life's about." Back then, at 24, it sounded profound. Now, at 33, I think he never really moved past that mindset. I feel sad for both of us, honestly. That we're here. That it's come to this. 1. Seeing the word divorce appear hundreds of times has had an unexpected effect. It still feels surreal, but it's less crushing now. I don't burst into tears every time the word enters my mind. I'm trying to digest that this might really be where my life is heading. If that's the case, I want it to be a divorce rooted in love, not revenge. I don't care if people think that's delusional. Maybe he can't give me the life I need, but I know he can handle a peaceful ending. People keep suggesting I go around telling everyone the exact reason why we're splitting. But here's the truth, I won't need to. He'll tell them. He'll say we became sexually incompatible. There might be some shocked reactions, but nowhere near what people think. He's a loyal friend, a beloved godfather, and a rock to so many in our life. They're going to stand by him, just like he would for them. Final update. So many of you asked for closure, and I feel like I owe it to the ones who gave me solid advice and helped me look at this situation more clearly. I wasn't expecting this post to shift my perspective the way it has, but it really did. Before I met with my husband last night, I read every single comment and every DM. Every single one. With all that swirling around in my head, I drove the hour back to our house, leaving the boys with my parents. I walked in with mixed emotions, hope, fear, sadness. Mostly, I just wanted to stay composed. Deep down, I wanted this to be a moment where we felt connected again, even just for a moment. When I walked through the door, he was already sitting at the kitchen table. And the second I saw him, I nearly lost my breath. He looked wrecked. This is a man who's usually stoic, almost unnervingly composed. But last night? He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He asked how I was doing, and how the boys were. I didn't dance around it. I told him the kids were fine, enjoying a snow day at my parents', and reminded him that he was the one who wanted this talk. So I told him, go ahead, say what you need to say. The way I said it came out colder than I meant. There was a sharpness to my voice that felt foreign, not like either of us. But it's where we are now, somewhere strange and sad and uncertain. Still, that's how it came out. He started by apologizing, saying he could have handled his emotions better and should have communicated the options he saw more clearly. I didn't think too much of that at first. He always beats himself up over how he handles things in hindsight. He's the kind of person who's rarely satisfied with how he performs in emotional situations. Then came the part one didn't expect. He said he'd thought long and hard, and now believed opening the marriage wasn't the solution. He admitted it was a frantic, desperate idea he'd latched onto in the heat of his emotions the night before. In his eyes, the only real path forward was separation. And then he dropped another bomb. He had already arranged for 3 months of unpaid leave from work to sort everything out. He was already starting to get emotional. And while I had made a promise to myself to stay composed, it was getting harder by the second. Looking back, I wish I hadn't said what I said next. I think I said it because of something someone in the comments suggested. I looked him straight in the eye and asked if he'd already found someone else to sleep with. The second it left my mouth, I regretted it. It felt like I had just kicked him while he was already down, and the worst part? I didn't even believe it was true. He looked crushed. He asked me if I really thought he was capable of that. And I told him the truth, I don't know what you're capable of anymore. And that's when my composure cracked. Tears started falling, not loud sobs, but the kind that make your throat close up. He said the same things he had last time, that he'll always love me, that I'll always be the mother of his children, and nothing will ever change that. We were both crying then, but still in control of ourselves, until I said something that neither of us was ready for. It came out of me before I even thought it through. I asked him if he was really prepared to miss half of our sons' lives. That question hit him like a freight train. I knew we'd talk about the kids eventually, but I hadn't planned to throw that kind of emotional grenade. The first time I saw him cry from sadness was during his ultimatum, but this time was different. This was him completely unraveling. All he managed to say was, "I don't know what to do," and then he just broke. Full-on, uncontrollable sobbing. I sat there, frozen, watching a man I've always seen as strong and composed fall apart completely. I've always known how much he loves our boys, but I've never seen him lose control like that. It was gut-wrenching. Part of me wanted to comfort him immediately, hold him like he's held me through some of my worst moments, but I was still hurt and angry. It didn't feel fair. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there. But not for long. I broke too. Hard. I started crying again, this time harder, and all I could say was that I was sorry. I told him I didn't want to lose him. That he's the only person I want to wake up next to every morning. That I want us to keep sharing breakfast with our boys, just like we always have. He kept repeating the same thing, "I don't know what to do." I won't give you every second of what happened after that, but I will share what mattered. Once the heavy crying passed, we just sat there and talked. Really talked. I brought up how his best friend's wife had reached out to me, offering support. He told me he'd already shared everything with them. That didn't surprise me. He's incredibly close to them, he was the best man at their wedding and his godfather to their kids. For anyone who assumed he was sleeping with his best friend's wife, I'm sorry, but that's just not the world we live in. That kind of accusation is more a reflection of whoever thinks that way. I asked what advice they gave him. He said they told him they'd love him no matter what happened, but they also told him he seriously needs therapy. When I asked if he planned to go, his first reaction was resistance. But then, after a pause, he said if both of them were telling him he needed it, they were probably right. He said he'd start looking for someone he could work with. That moment, that simple "I'll find a therapist," felt like the first flicker of light in this long, dark tunnel. Looking back, I wish we had involved his friends sooner. They are his chosen family. He trusts my opinion, but I'm also part of the conflict. In his mind, my suggestions came with an agenda. But when the people he loves most, his tiny circle of 5 or so, say the same thing, it lands differently. And now, they've told him what I've been trying to say all along, this goes deeper than just us. As soon as he said he'd give therapy a try, I grabbed his hands and told him I was all in. That I'd work harder to meet him where he is. That I can't picture a life with anyone else. I told him I didn't want either of us to miss birthdays, holidays, or anything in our boys' lives. I even suggested we take a long trip to Europe, just the two of us. We've only gone once since having kids, and that trip was mostly about visiting friends. This time, it would be just for us. Shout out to the commenter who gave me that idea. I made a lot of promises that night, and I meant every single one. We let my parents know I wouldn't be coming back for the boys that night. I've overshared a lot of this journey, and I probably won't ever do something like this again, but for now it feels good to write it all out. I told my husband about this post and asked if he was okay with me sharing this last update. He was mostly concerned about anonymity, but when I explained what I'd shared, he said he didn't mind. That's his way of showing he does care, but chooses not to act like he does, because he doesn't want to feel controlled by that part of himself. He even gave me a smirk and joked, "Do I want to see what people wrote?" I said no, and he laughed and left it at that. Very on brand for him. He doesn't use Reddit or social media. He's seen too much of the sausage making behind the scenes. But both of us know this isn't over. We have a long way to go, and there's no guarantee it'll work out. But I'm going to try. I know some of this was my fault, not because I intentionally hurt him, but because I misjudged how deeply he was hurting. I didn't realize how much it was eating him up inside to be lying in bed next to someone he loved, feeling unwanted. It wasn't about sex. Not really. Masturbation, hookups, none of that was the solution. My husband is a hypersexual man. That's part of who he is. And I love him completely, including that part. I need to get better at getting in the right headspace for intimacy more often. And he needs to stop turning his disappointment inward and punishing himself emotionally when we don't have sex. If we didn't have kids, maybe I'd feel less hopeful. But we do. And that means we have something big to fight for. We've always been a team, and this needs to be no different. I know this whole post has turned into a bit of a ramble, so I'll wrap it up with a few thoughts sparked by everything I've read. Yes, my husband is a network engineer. He taught himself to code as a teenager for, let's say, less than ideal reasons. But he came from slums, and his sense of ethics evolved with his circumstances. He earned a full ride to a top university and has had a stable financial life ever since. He's exceptional at what he does. He's also obsessive with finances. He analyzes our life like it's a set of data points. That's just how he works. And weirdly, I love that about him. Most people told me to leave him. Half of those told me to do it gleefully. I've reread my own words so many times now, wondering if I accidentally painted him as a villain. I tried to be fair. As a thought experiment, I wonder how different the comments would have been if I mentioned earlier that his second biggest charity donation every year goes to a shelter for women and children. A decision rooted in his own painful childhood. This part might stir things up, but I'll say it anyway. Yes, there is an element of control in how my husband relates to intimacy. It's not coercive, everything he desires is rooted in enthusiastic consent. But control is a theme in who he is. It's part of what I've always admired about him. On one of our first dates, when he said he loves great sex and great food, he also asked me what my relationship to control was. I've thought about that a lot over the years. He's intensely self-aware. He knows he has strong impulses and is careful not to project them onto others, especially our kids. You really can't understand my husband without understanding how deeply he values control, but also how much he fights not to be controlled himself. He tracks every detail of his life, writes nightly journal entries, and keeps them archived in a private server downstairs. He runs analytics on himself like he's a case study. People have asked if he's neurodivergent. He's not socially awkward or anything, but no, he's definitely not a normal guy by any conventional definition. He barely sleeps, maybe 4 hours a night, and still functions at a level most people can't reach. He's complicated, driven, deeply sensitive, and one of the most special people I've ever known. And I love him. I still love him so much. I want this to work. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it does. As one person messaged me, girl, go F*** your husband. Seriously, please, do the work. You both deserve it. Thank you. To those who supported me, and even those who challenged me, I'm grateful.